Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we're going to be going over the latest news and commentary based on the strikes that took place last night, U.S. time, between Israel and Iran. As you know, Israel knocked out an embassy compound a couple weeks back. Then Iran launched drones and some missiles into Israel. Now, last night, Israel is doing a counterstrike on Iran. So I did a couple of videos last night as the news was breaking. Some more clarity is happening a little bit. What is interesting is that Al Jazeera at this moment in time isn't really playing a whole lot about it. So it seems as though the news within the Muslim community is trying to be very quiet about what happened. Does that mean that was Israel successful in their strike in, hitting certain types of facilities? Were they not successful? Are they being quiet because they don't want to escalate? Iran is not as stable as people think. And this is part of the reason why I believe knocking out places like Iran now is better than kicking the can down the road, where they may get unconventional warfare and it changes the whole strategic landscape. Another case in point, North Korea should have been taken out in the 1990s. We didn't, and now we have a problem with North Korea. So sometimes war needs to happen to have peace down the road. And if you sometimes kick the can down the road, it's far worse, far more expensive. So I'm going to play a video by Times Radio. The one that's speaking is Sir Richard Dalton. Before we do that, please make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Also follow me on X and GETTR. You can also follow me by clicking the link in this description of this video, and that will allow you to follow me on Podomatic and Apple Podcast. So you can, follow me and listen to the audio version of my videos by subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcast or Podomatic. Link is in the description.
That Iran has downplayed the attack last night, and we have to hope that Israel will leave it at that and hasn't got other measures up its sleeve to rub home the message which it has sent by the attack last night. But the attack hasn't changed either the strategic or the tactical situation. Iran knew that its facilities were within reach of Israeli action. There is a message from Israel: we're not afraid to attack our own territory, in the way that you are not afraid to attack our Israeli territory, but that is about as far as it goes so far.
US officials have confirmed that Israel carried out airstrikes against Iran in the early hours of Friday. Israel has yet to issue a statement on the incident, while Tehran has so far pled the attack, saying it has no immediate plans for retaliation. Here's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak speaking earlier.
The situation overnight, as you would appreciate, it's a developing situation. It wouldn't be right for me to speculate until the facts become clear, and we're working to.
I have an idea for a meal prep food truck.
Facts become clear, and we're working to confirm the details together with allies. We have condemned Iran's reckless and dangerous barrage of missiles against Israel on Saturday, and Israel absolutely has the right to self-defense. But as I said to Prime Minister Netanyahu when I spoke to him last week, and more generally, significant escalation is not in anyone's interest. What we want to see is calm heads prevail across the region.
But is this a sign that we're inching closer to a full-blown regional conflict? But we can speak now to Sir Richard Dalton, who's a former UK ambassador to Iran. Sir Richard, thank you for joining us on the programme this afternoon.
Good morning.
In terms of what we know, we have had confirmation from America of this attack, but both Israel and Iran are staying pretty tight-lipped. So do we have any sense of the scale of it?
Something definitely happened, but it was clearly a pretty small affair. We don't know whether it was a missile or drones. If it was just drones, clearly the explosive capability of a quadcopter, which has been mentioned, is pretty limited. It could be that in the next few days, news of significant damage will leak out. But one very important indicator came from the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has staff on the ground in Iran monitoring Iranian facilities. And he said that no Iranian facilities connected with their civil nuclear program were attacked.
In terms of Iran's sort of sphere of influence, there has been a lot spoken about since those October the 7th attacks and what's been going on in terms of the operations in Gaza, of the kind of malign influence that Iran has in the region, of how it sponsors proxies in the region, of what its involvement may have been on the October the 7th attacks itself. Is it surprising then that the official word from Tehran is that they're not planning any retaliation for this? Because everything leading up to this point, the international community's supposition has been that it's in Iran's interest for this to escalate.
No, I don't think anybody has been thinking that it's in Iran's interest. They've taken their cue from sound analysis that Iran is not in a strong position to wage a conventional war and has not sought to egg on Hezbollah. It has not sought to enter the conflict in Gaza. For a while, it encouraged pinprick attacks, particularly on American facilities by its allies in Iraq and Syria. But at this stage, it's not surprising at all that Iran has downplayed the attack last night. And we have to hope that Israel will leave it at that and hasn't got other measures up its sleeve to rub home the message which
It's time to destroy Iran's nuclear and military capability. If they're weak, and they're the ones that are funding Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, why not knock them out? Why just keep on, well, the international community is afraid of $150 barrel oil. Oh, we're afraid of a wider conflict. It's going to be a lot worse, and our options are going to be drastically diminished if nuclear weapon capability is in the hands of the Iranians. Now, the people running the UK, the United States, the European Union, they're not dumb. They know this, but they're afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. This is PNN, so I have to go to commercial. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the toothpaste that I offer. It is the best toothpaste that you'll be able to get. It has no fluoride. It has structural nanosilver. It'll neutralize pathogens, whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help to reduce cardiovascular and valvular disease. Good oral hygiene will help with improving your cardiovascular function by diminishing the chances of valvular disease and that inflammation that may take place in your vascular system. So good oral hygiene is really important. A lot of people, if they don't have good oral hygiene, they're increasing their chances of cardiovascular disease and valvular disease. So stop that by taking good products that will improve your oral hygiene. This product is one of them. It has no fluoride in it. Fluoride makes you stupid. So get the fluoride out of your water, get it out of your toothpaste, and take things that have no fluoride in it. So this is fluoride free. This has structural nanosilver, and it's a very high quality product. It's going to be the best toothpaste that you ever bought. So please go to the store and get a few tubes of this. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. In addition, I offer 5 different varieties of structural nano silver soap. Very high quality soap, so get a couple bars for your household. I have it in charcoal tea tree, lemongrass, pepper. This one's lavender. I have it in peppermint and also in oatmeal spice. So please go to the store and get the high quality soaps that I offer. It neutralizes pathogens, and it's a lot better than the stuff that you would buy from Procter & Gamble. Go to my store and also get the all natural deodorants. I've partnered up with Rainbow Herbals and we've created these deodorants. We have citrus and we also have it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. It's for males and females. It's a deodorant that you use every day. All right. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It's all natural, very high quality. It doesn't have any aluminum in it and it doesn't have any baking soda in it. All right. It's all natural. In addition, by using this product, it's going to help to slowly detoxify your body. So there's a dual purpose here. All right. It's for males and females. Get a couple bars of this for your household. In addition, to help improve your skincare, we have a everything bar. All right. The everything bar, you apply it on your skin, even if you have no problems, just apply it on your skin and you'll notice your skin will start to smooth in approximately 2 to 3 days. You keep on doing this on a regular basis and you're going to have smoother skin. All right. But you can also apply it on a cut and it'll heal the cut quicker by it'll speed the time by about a third. In addition, if you have an abrasion, you put it on the abrasion, or a minor burn, you put it on the burn. If you have a bug bite, you put it on the bug bite. All right. If you have some sort of psoriasis or eczema, put it on that. The reason being, it's going to bring down that inflammatory response. See, what happens with psoriasis is that there's a buildup of keratin. So the pro-inflammatory response signals the production of more keratin, and what will happen is that there will be a buildup of skin that doesn't want to flake off. But if you diminish that pro-inflammatory response, then what will happen is less keratin will be produced. And what will happen is that your skin thickness in the psoriasis area will start to go down as it's starting to flake off. So it's about reducing inflammation. All right. So it's our Even Better bar is used for skincare, but also to help to heal. And it'll also, if you have a muscle ache, rub it on that muscle area and it will relieve the pain. So you can use it after a workout. But if you do it every day, you'll notice that the ingredients that are in it, they're all natural, right? And also essential oils from the Himalayas, that your skin will start to be smoother. All right. So apply it on your body every day, on your face every day, and you'll see a huge difference, even if you don't have an abrasion or a cut or acne or any problems. So please get the deodorants and get the Even Better bar that I offer on the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
And by the attack last night. Of course, that attack hasn't changed either the strategic or the tactical situation. Iran knew that its facilities were within reach of Israeli action. There is a message from Israel: we're not afraid to attack our own territory, in the way that you were not afraid to attack our Israeli territory, but that is about as far as it goes so far.
So sorry, in terms of my original question then, so are you suggesting that Iran has been a good faith actor throughout all of this and that it hasn't been working with proxies? I'm just trying to be clear.
No, I'm not suggesting that. They have been. I told you that they have supported and encouraged their allies to attack the United States.
Hello, I'm Martin Sheen. I'm reaching out to you now, not as an actor, but as a concerned fellow American. In the few short years since Donald Trump was defeated, his Republican allies have introduced more than 1,000 bills to restrict the right to vote. Imagine 1,000 bills taking aim at the
to attack the United States, but they have, with Hezbollah, not been keen on opening a significant front against Israel, which they have the capability of doing. It's important to step back and look at the region as a whole, which is roiled by civil war and conflict, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and to look at who's actually involved across their borders. Yes, Iran is, and you can stigmatize that as destabilizing if you wish, but also one should think about the destabilizing effect of Israeli actions, particularly in the West Bank, in seizing more land, in killing, in arresting, in provoking Palestinian population there by continuing its apartheid-like activities. You also would want to refer to Turkish actions in northern Iraq against Kurds. You cast your mind back to the Saudi UAE invasion of Yemen, which caused immense loss and suffering and exacerbated the civil war there. You might even point to United States assistance to Israel, which, in spite of the United States reticence and caution about what Israel is doing in Gaza, continues unabated. So there are a lot of destabilizing actors at work, and these conflicts have to be settled first time, starting with Gaza, which is the most acute source of instability at present.
But originally, I did want to get on to the role of the US in this, because we've heard from Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, in the last hour he's been speaking at the G7, and he was very clear that the US weren't informed about this till the very last minute, and they certainly took no part in it. The kind of the way they've been talking to and about Israel has hardened quite noticeably in recent weeks. I mean, is there a suggestion that things, aren't as the allyship isn't quite as harmonious as it has been of late?
It's often inharmonious, but still.
It's all about expedience for the election. The Biden administration doesn't want the Middle East to be fighting during his reelection because he needs Michigan, and a big Arab population is in Dearborn, Michigan. So if he's allowing the Israelis to fight Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, the Muslim community is going to not vote for Biden. It's all about expediency. And this is the problem. And this is why Netanyahu should just say, US, this is what we're going to do, tough. Because the can has been kicked down too many times, down the road too many times, and that a breakaway nuclear capability is around the corner with Iran.
The fact is that President Biden regards America's commitment to Israel's security as ironclad, and we saw that with the coalition of foreign support, which was necessary to assist Israel to fend off the Iranian missile and drone attacks. So yes, the relationship will always be fractious, and the United States has in effect been weak in its approach to Israel. It has not backed up its words. It has said, if you think back, that Israeli action is disproportionate, that if Israeli behavior doesn't change, then United States policy might change. They've opposed the idea of an attack on the Rafah area, but Israel has said that it intends to do that. So clearly it's a vital relationship for the stability and peace of the Middle East, but it's got its difficulties.
Okay, let's drop into live now.
Right, hours, again, isolated, or what do you think could create a larger situation? Again, Iran really downplaying this and not even mentioning Israel by name. And so they seem to be backing away as well, which seems to have been the point in all of this. But what could change that dynamic?
Well, and I wrote a piece in a conversation about this last
Just
Sunday.
think how
And I
stupid.
said,
Just think about how stupid that is. Well, we're just want to de-escalate it. We're not going to solve the problem. We're just going to de-escalate it. Oh, Israel kills a general that actually is coordinating with Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, and Iran gets upset, so they launch missiles and drones, and then Israel attacks whatever because we really don't know last night, and then that should be just everything's copacetic. These people aren't realizing you have to kill Esau. The sole root of Esau is the root of the problem, and that is the terrorist aspect to this region. It's Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran. That military apparatus has to be taken out.
Yeah, the Iranian attacks and potentially what Israel might do in the future. Now, at least we've seen one aspect of that. That my assessment was that it was much more likely that the conflict between Iran and Israel would return to the shadow arena, in which both sides have been attacking each other now for decades. And again, Israel has conducted hundreds of operations against Iranian interests or Iranian-backed targets in all the countries I described. Likewise, Iran has supported all the different proxies and partners in the regions, and that's included terrorist attacks against Israel and rocket attacks, and that's been going on for decades as well. So I do think we're going to see more of that. Now, the thing that could get us back to crossing more thresholds, like we've seen over the past week or so, is a large Iranian attack against Israeli interests somewhere, or again, an attempted attack on Israel itself. But I just don't see that the probability of that happening, or I think that probability is very low because tensions seem to have been restored back to where they were before. Doesn't mean both countries are going to enter into a peace agreement. Obviously, they're.
This is where the international community is getting it wrong. This is where the talking heads get it wrong. They don't understand that this is not about de-escalation and going to basically some sort of homeostasis pre-October 7th. The world is marching towards a religious event that has been in the making for over 2,000 years. This is not going to de-escalate. This is only going to advance. And I find it very, how do I want to say this? Interesting that because it's the month of April, this is the zenith point of this cycle for the root of Jacob to be strong to hit Esau. There's an additional 3 months of strength in relative terms where Jacob will still be stronger than Esau. But once August starts, Esau is going to be stronger. And their zenith point, their apex, will be in October. Now, Netanyahu not getting the job done during this point in time where Jacob is strong, I think is a huge strategic error. And it's because the United States, even though most of the soul root of the nation is aligned with the soul root of Jacob, there's a little bit of Esau. And because of that, there is this prevention of getting things done. World peace will happen in the long run by rooting out Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. But if you don't, you're going to have a lot worse condition down the road. So these talking heads, when they keep on talking about homeostasis, or they don't even use the word homeostasis, but they, getting back to normalization, de-escalation, that is the wrong policy, because it's not a group of people fighting each other like what's happening in Ukraine and Russia. This is a biblical event that is taking place that is tied to the Temple Mount and the bringing down of the Dome of the Rock. That's what this is all about. So trying to stabilize a situation where the system, this metaphysical system, wants to go to something different. The birth pains of this are going to be more extreme by fighting it, by going against the grain of this natural flow, the metaphysical flow that's happening.
Hatred on both sides are enmity, but I do think we're going to see more of that shadow war type activity than direct attacks by the other on their soil or against the other side's soil.
And what do you make of the fact that the United States also hasn't really come out and said much? And again, Biden was not in the Situation Room in the overnight hours. Does that indicate anything to you? Or really, Israel seems to have wanted to act on it?
This happened late at night, around 10 o'clock U.S. time, New York time, Eastern Standard Time, and about 5 o'clock-ish in Israel, all right? That's when the news started breaking. Biden's already to sleep at about 8:30 after he has his ice cream. Of course he's not going to be in this situation where he doesn't have the stamina to be president.
Without, asking the United States for their thoughts on this.
Well, there could have been a whole series of White House National Security Council meetings up until yesterday. They just may not have involved the president chairing an actual National Security Council meeting. But I'm sure, having worked in the White House for a year under President Trump, I'm sure that there was a lot of activity led by the National Security Council to get the United States to kind of get its ducks in a row in terms of what Israel might do, and whether Israel would tell the United States what they were going to do in advance. We don't know the answer to that, even based on what happened yesterday. But as you mentioned, there has been no official statement by President Biden. Maybe he will say that later this afternoon. I do think because the Israeli attack, even though they haven't claimed it, was so limited in scope and didn't cause any death or real physical damage, that perhaps the U.S. Sort of posture right now is to just not say anything and let Israel do more of the talking, if at all, in terms of kind of what the Israeli position. But the U.S. was not involved in the operations last night, as far as we know. And that's another thing that President Biden said going back a week, is that he does not want to get the United States involved in offensive Israeli operations against Iran. So assuming Israel carried out the attack last night, I have to believe that the U.S. wasn't involved in that, and that's sort of the policy that will be going forward, unless something changes in the calculus on that.
Happening just moments ago in the House, lawmakers have now teed up the debate to discuss the foreign aid bill. And again, this package, enormous, but really breaking down into aid to Ukraine, but also to Israel, as well as a number of other different countries. In your mind, what has happened last Saturday, what has happened in the overnight hours, could those series of events impact the likelihood of lawmakers to move this bill forward, as we have seen some escalation in the Middle East when it comes to specifically Israel and a number of other countries?
Yeah, Stephanie, that's another excellent question. And as you mentioned, this
I think that as escalation takes place in the Middle East, there is going to be push for the passage of funding. That's for sure. The question is it going to be wrapped up with Ukraine or not? I'm against funding Ukraine anymore. Against it. They lost on the battlefield. They can't get the job done. And there needs to be some sort of peace negotiation between Ukraine and Russia and get it over with. It should have never happened because NATO and the United States in general has had this Cold War footing ever since the fall of the Berlin Wall. The Middle East is a different case. What's going on in Asia is different. We should have a war in Asia and we should have a war in the Middle East. This war in the Middle East, not the one that came right out of 9/11, right? Which was very orchestrated. And everyone understands what I mean by that. All right. This one is biblical. And what's going on in Asia, especially with the first island change with China, we have to make sure that they don't win, so we don't lose hegemonic power that we earned from World War II. Oh, by the way, my grandfather was a CB during World War II, making sure we had that hegemonic power. And we have people like Biden pissing it away. So if China was able to strategically control that region, we're going to lose our waterway shipping prowess. And what's going to happen is that if they win, there's going to be an upsurge in Western society where they're going to try to mimic their version of capitalism, their version of government. If you think I'm wrong, look at what was happening in the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, where socialism and communism were taking root in constitutional democracies, different types. You had this happening in the UK, you had this happening in the United States, you had this happening in different countries in Europe at the time, where communism was starting and socialism was starting to take root. Their version, China's version of government and of capitalism, will be proposed in the parliaments or proposed in the congresses. You're seeing that already with the ultra-liberal. Now, can you imagine when our prowess is diminished? How much more momentum these socialists will have or communists will have in Congress? That's why. See, sometimes war has to be fought for a greater good down the road. There's too many Americans, and you listen to them on podcasts, there's too many Americans out there that are pacifists. Not every war should be fought, but some wars need to be fought and need to be won, or you lose the whole enchilada.
This foreign aid package has been held up for weeks now, if not a little bit longer. But I do think most of the Republican opposition to it is more based on the aid going to Ukraine, and it's not about sort of opposition to aid to Israel. So just based on the tensions in the region and the thresholds that were crossed by both Iran and Israel against each other? Will this recognition that the U.S. does need to do more to support Israel against Iran, will that be the thing that gets the bill over the line? Not sure. My sense is that it's more the Ukraine component of this aid package is where some members on the Republican side of the House are really digging in and opposing the total package, even if there would be a benefit to Israel. So that's another political calculus that will have to be worked through in Washington, D.C.
This is why I keep on saying that Netanyahu needs to stop worrying about what the United States is doing. I know that they need to fund the Iron Dome more, replenish the Iron Dome because they shot off a bunch of defense missiles and all this stuff. I get it, all right? But the thing is that you gotta be more forceful and get the job done. Instead of just slow moving this, it's going to be more expensive and there can be strategic error, and the opponent, Iran, could gain momentum, gain strength, especially in unconventional warfare. Netanyahu needs to say, United States, we need your help, but we're going it alone even if you don't. And just get it done. Not hitting facilities in Iran that probably are benign. The strike, we don't know the detail yet, but it seems to me that it wasn't that big of a strike last night. Netanyahu could have made it a lot bigger bang. Why did he not? Oh, because the United States is saying, you know what? We don't want you to escalate it because we're worried. We're worried about $150 barrel of oil. We're worried about inflation. We're worried about losing the election in November. Netanyahu should have been much, much more forceful. That last night was the time to actually destroy the nuclear capability of Iran. Now, why did Israel not do that? Is it because there was so much pressure by the United States? Or is it that Israel's afraid to do it? Don't be afraid, and don't worry about what the fucking United States has to say. Because if you worry about what the United States has to say, when it comes to international affairs, especially in the last 30 years, the United States has fucked up almost every time.
Before we let you go, anything else that you're taking a look at? And again, we started the conversation whether this could be the beginning or the end, and you were sharing that you feel at this point in time, at least from what has been exchanged, this likely will be the end of that direct line of communication, for lack of a better word, between Israel and Iran. But anything else really on your radar in the coming days or the coming weeks?
Well, one thing I thought was interesting about all intents and purposes, the Israeli attack yesterday is that, based on the media reporting, it appears that there were a small number of drones that were launched against this Iranian Air Force base near the city of Isfahan. And that almost mirrors the impact of the Iranian attack, at least the few weapons that got through of the 300 against an Israeli base in southern Israel, going back to last Saturday. So this seems, if that was truly the operational design of the Israeli response, that is almost a one-for-one measure against what Iran was successfully able to do.
I think the Israelis wanted to do more. I think the U.S. said, okay, we can't convince you not to do anything, so just do something of equal measure. And I think there was some sort of meeting of the minds between the Israelis and the United States Defense Department. And the middle ground was what we saw last night. The little that we know about it. But that's not the right policy. The right policy is to go and get it done. Can you imagine storming those islands in World War II, all right, in the Pacific, and go, you know what? We'll just send a few Marines to storm the beaches, and we'll go fishing, for a few hours in the Bay Area. the job wouldn't get done. You got to be all in, all in. So what happens is you got dipshits like this that will just eat up time in a broadcast, just rehashing what happened, not solving the problem, not telling you where it's going, but just rehashing what they did. Real thinkers are going to tell you where it's going and what's the proper measure to getting the job done. Be wary of people that say, oh, we can't escalate this. Why? Ask the question why. All right? There's lots of people that listen to my channel that disagree with me. It's okay. Even though you're wrong. It's okay. But just think about this. Why should Israel not knock out Iran if they are a nuclear threat? That's a known fact. They are becoming a nuclear threat. So should the nuclear threat continue on to the point where strategic advantage is diminished by Israel and gained by the Iranians? The strategic battle space is diminished for the United States and enhanced for Iran. That's what pacifism, that's what a pacifist strategy would result to. So when someone says we can't escalate the war, Israel shouldn't be escalating the war, or the United States shouldn't be escalating the war, ask the question why. Now, if someone is saying, which I am, to escalate the war, ask why. To knock out the unconventional means that is starting to percolate out of Iran. Not only are they funding conventional warfare, with rockets and drones, with Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, but they're developing unconventional means. And this is a regime that is in line, that is antithetical to Western values and values even with certain belief systems within Islam. Because this is the Shia and the Sunni issue. Shia is Iran. Sunni is Saudi Arabia. The Saudis don't even want the Ayatollah to have a nuclear weapon. So there's going to be an escalation. This nuclear proliferation is a major problem. So if you're a pacifist and you say, don't escalate the war in the Middle East because of XYZ, barrel of oil too expensive, or you think that the Palestinians should have more land, or whatever it is, it's not going to deter that strategy isn't going to deter Iran from going nuclear, doing a breakout.
Doesn't look like Israel launched hundreds of weapons the way Iran did. So that seems to really jump out at me at the moment.
All right, Javed Ali, Associate Professor at the University of Michigan Ann Arbor. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us here on Live Now from Fox. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Stephanie.
And you are watching Live Now from Fox. Time right now is 11:27 Eastern, 8:27 Pacific. We are going to step away for a 2-minute break. We'll be right back.
All right, so this is Times Radio. Wait, no. This is blinking.
For not only their wonderful hospitality, but also their remarkable leadership. The G7 is in many ways a steering committee for the world's most advanced democracies. And we emerge from this meeting.
Lovely. All right, let me do commercial because this is PNN and this is obviously a professional operation. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video, and get the structural nano silver. You can get max 35 or max 14, or the silver solution. They're at different ppms and at different price points. Take a teaspoon of this a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle with it, and swallow it. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. Now, many people wanted to have the ability to have the liquid with them while they go to work or when they're traveling or whatever. So you can buy these applicators that I have on my store. You get a spray, you get a dropper, and you get a nasal spray here. And you just fill the liquid in here and put it in your bag, and then you can just spray it on your hands, spray it in the back of your mouth. You can use the nasal spray or the dropper. That way, you will be able to neutralize pathogens and boost up your immune system. All right. This will help not just, during the crisis that we went through in 2020, but also during the allergy season. So please take this every day. It'll help to boost up your immune system and neutralize pathogens. All right. So go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the max 35, the max 14, or the silver solution. In addition, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's going on in this world, and you might get some brain fog because the water that you drink has fluoride in it, and you're getting, bad air and everything else, stress. All right. You may get brain fog. Take the clarity factor. This clarity factor will get rid of the brain fog and help improve your mental acuity. Take it every day. I take it twice a day. I take it in the morning. I take it mid-afternoon. Some people just take it once a day. But take it every day, and it's going to improve your cognitive function. You're going to be able to get that brain fog away. You're going to be able to concentrate at work, concentrate on your schooling. And even if, you're retired, taking this every day is going to help to maintain those dendritic connections, actually improve the dendritic connections. So you're going to have neoplasticity, neuroplasticity, right? You're going to have this neuroplasticity, and you're going to have better connections between your neurons, and you're going to think better. Take this every day. It's going to be part of the protocol to slow down the aging process and to improve longevity.
Our ministers, more united than ever, more united in facing critical challenges that lie before the international community, including Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the conflict in the Middle East, and as well the importance of sustaining, supporting a free and open Indo-Pacific. These and many other subjects were the focus of our conversations over the last 2 days, which I found to be extremely productive. And again, what strikes me the most, and you can really see this over the last 3 years, is the extraordinary convergence in our approaches to these challenges, convergence between the United States, Europe, and major partners in Asia. Let me touch on some of the most important things that we discussed and concluded over these past couple of days. And of course, I commend to you the statement that we put out or will soon be out on the part of the entire G7. First, the G7 condemned the unprecedented Iranian attack on Israel, unprecedented in scope and scale. Scope because it was a direct attack on Israel from Iran, scale because it involved more than
I haven't seen his speech, but just bear with me here. It doesn't matter what the international community thinks in this war in the Middle East with Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. Reason being, there is a series of events that are going to take place, especially with the countdown of the sacrificing of the red heifer and the making of the ash, the red heifer ash for purification of the temple. There is a series of things that are taking place that are going to happen no matter what. The question is it going to be, how bloody is it going to be? Now, if you have an international community that's trying to go against the grain of it, it's going to be bloody. If you have an international community that is going with the grain, then it will be less bloody. But the general rule here is that the international community doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything because it's not going to solve the problem. Action solves the problem.
Munitions, including ballistic missiles. We're committed to Israel's security. We're also committed to de-escalating, to trying to bring this tension to a close. You saw as well, or you'll see soon in the G7 statement, a commitment to hold Iran to account for its destabilizing activities, holding it to account by degrading its missile and drone capabilities. And yesterday, the United States announced additional sanctions on Iran, targeting UAV programs, the steel industry, companies that are associated with the IRGC, the Ministry of Defense, and its armed forces logistics. The G7 statement makes clear that G7 countries will adopt additional sanctions or other measures in the days ahead. Even as we've been dealing with the conflict in the Middle East and again, the unprecedented attack by Iran on Israel, we've remained intensely focused on Gaza. We urge the rapid implementation of Israel's humanitarian assistance commitments. More aid, more crossings, better deconfliction, better distribution of the assistance to all who need it. We've seen important steps over the last couple of weeks with more crossings opening, more aid getting in, more aid getting around. But we need to see sustained results. And we need, in particular, to make sure that there is distribution throughout Gaza. We also focused on the imperative of getting to a ceasefire with the release of hostages. Such a ceasefire would facilitate the dramatic expansion of the humanitarian assistance. It would also let Gazans return to the north, those who do this.
Sorry I'm late. Trying to close our books. It's the end of the month. What do you guys have?
It's at the front of the grid for Saturday's sprint race with crucial points up for grabs.
I would surprisingly very quick. I could get good tire temps and I could push hard.
All right, let's gonna go back to Fox here live.
Following since we came on the air, Iran fired air defenses at a major air base in a nuclear site near the central city of Isfahan after spotting drones early this morning, raising fears of a possible Israeli strike in retaliation for Tehran's unprecedented drone and missile assault on the country. It's unclear if the country came under attack, as no Iranian official directly acknowledged the possibility in Israel's military not responding to a request for comment. However, tensions have been high since that Saturday assault on Israel amid its war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip and its own strikes targeting Iran in Syria. U.S. officials declining to comment as of early this morning, but American broadcast networks quoting unnamed U.S. officials saying Israel did carry out the attack. And that Israeli strike on Iran is generating fears this morning that conflict in the Middle East could boil over into a larger regional war. Fox News correspondent Shanley Painter joining us now, reporting on the very latest of this conflict.
A U.S. government source telling Fox News Israel launched an early Friday morning strike against Iran, retaliation after Iran carried out a wide-scale attack on Israel last Sunday, firing off more than 300 drones and missiles. Iran carrying out the barrage after it said a deadly Israeli airstrike earlier this month killed top military officials at its consulate in Syria. This as the country's president warned Israel any response would be met with force. U.S. government sources say Friday's Israeli strike did not use manned aircraft. The U.S. says it had no involvement, but Israeli officials notified the U.S. beforehand. Israel conducted a limited strike on the Iranian province of Isfahan, which is home to a major Iranian military airbase and contains facilities associated with the country's nuclear program.
It seems as if it was somewhat of a tit for tat.
Iran state media is reporting the country's air defense systems were activated, but say Isfahan nuclear sites are safe and not harmed.
With Israel flexing its muscle a little bit, perhaps we can get Iran to back down a little bit.
Prior to the strike, U.S. officials recommended Israel practice restraint. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said they would be the ones to decide when and how to respond. The White House not yet commenting on the strike, but the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem issued a security alert telling American government employees and their families to restrict travel outside certain areas in Israel out of an abundance of caution. I'm Chandler Painter, Fox News.
Shirley, thank you so much for that update. Meanwhile, the pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University and elsewhere are the latest flashpoint over the war in Gaza. But the FBI has been on alert for a while now, especially ahead of Passover. Director Christopher Wray says their investigations into anti-Jewish incidents have tripled since October 7th. Caroline Shively joining us now with more from Washington.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrations, including this one at Columbia University in New York. And another during President Biden's campaign event in Philadelphia Thursday has U.S. officials on heightened alert as the fighting between Israel and Hamas drags past the 6-month mark.
We have seen an increase in anti-Semitism. We have seen an increase in Islamophobia following the October 7th terrorist attacks.
In the 4 months after the Hamas attack on Israel, the FBI opened 3 times more anti-Jewish hate crime investigations than in the previous 4 months.
I've had my friends who were attacked for showing their Judaism, for wearing yarmulkes, for, showing their dog tags, for wearing Stars of David.
Even before the war in Israel, 63% of religiously motivated hate crimes in the U.S. were against Jews, although the group makes up just 2.4% of the population. Now federal law enforcement is warning of new anti-Semitic threats just before the start of Passover on Monday.
We at the Bureau remain particularly concerned that lone actors could target large gatherings, high-profile events, or symbolic or religious locations for violence.
In New York, police removed dozens of anti-Israeli protesters from Columbia's campus on Thursday. This is the first time school officials have brought police onto campus in decades. The FBI is also seeing an increase in anti-Semitic swatting, hoaxes claiming bomb and active shooter threats. In Washington, Caroline Shively, Fox News.
Caroline, thank you so much for that update. And as we continue to follow this breaking news, coming into our live now from Fox Studios, an unnamed U.S. official saying Israel launched a retaliatory strike against Iran. We want to check in now with Senior Lecturer in Criminal Justice and Homeland Security, Mr. Ken Gray, to get the very latest on this conflict.
Israel allegedly conducted retaliatory strikes against Iran. There were explosions heard near Isfahan, but also at a number of other sites within Iran. Iran seems to be brushing this off as an attack, but that they are not intending to take retaliation for these latest rounds of attacks. However, that is yet to be seen. But nonetheless, there may have been strikes. Isfahan is a military facility south of Tehran. That is the location where Iranian officials and military officials moved to and prior to their airstrike against Israel. So this is an important military facility, and it's also the location of Natanz, which is the place where nuclear weapon development is being conducted by the Iranians. In addition to Isfahan,
I'm going to do a commercial here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. This will help you get REM cycles, 3 REM cycles on average a night. That will help to consolidate memory, help to detoxify the body, and you'll get more energy. So please go to my store and take the Good Night Formula. Also get the lignans. Lignans are very important to take every day. It's a powder. You mix it with your food or with water, and it'll help to boost up your immune system and help to get your hormonal system in homeostasis. It's for males and females. Boost up your immune system with lignans. Take it every day. In addition, you need to bring down that inflammatory response to help to prevent that chronic overuse of your immune system. Bring down that inflammation by taking turmeric. Take it every day. I take it every day. Also take it with ashwagandha. This will help to bring down your glucose levels. Because what happens is that most Americans have too high of a glucose count in their blood, and that's pro-inflammatory. In addition, to get rid of senescent cells and to take a strong antioxidant, take the resveratrol that I offer on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Tehran, Fordo, Iraq, Natanz, Kargil, Bushehr, and Badr Abbas may have all also come under attack. So this is a robust attack, but at the same time limited in that some targets were hit, but it does not appear that there was major damage done at any of these locations. It's more symbolic, showing that the Israelis could do this, as opposed to trying to bring a lot of pain to Iran.
And Mr. King, this breaking news coming into our live now from Fox Studios from an unnamed U.S. official. We are still awaiting to see if Israel does take ownership of their alleged retaliatory strike on Iran. I want to ask you the implications if they did in fact do this, because we know that several of their allies, including the U.S., have encouraged them not to retaliate on Iran for fears of a regional conflict.
Absolutely. So I think the fact that this is a somewhat limited retaliation is directly because of that fear of turning this into a regional conflict. That is, this is a measured response. It's more showing Israel's capability of brushing off Iranian air defense and being able to get inside Iran, as opposed to having all of their resources knocked down in the process of carrying out an attack. In addition to the attack on Iran, there were also reports of explosions in both Syria and in Iraq. So there may have been more than the attack on Iran. It may have also been against proxies in Iraq and Syria.
And that's the concern, Mr. Kent. You know, there are so many conflicts going on in this region that it's been hard for different governments to pinpoint where each strike is coming from. And with that being said, I feel like it further alludes to this regional conflict maybe already underway. As you mentioned, you have Syria, Damascus, you have the Israel-Hamas war, you have the conflicts with Iran, you also have the conflicts with the Houthis in the Red Sea. So many different conflicts and so many terroristic organizations wanting to be in the spotlight for these horrific events.
So I point out that World War I started with the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, and that small events like that can lead to much greater world wide events. And so these small exchanges between Israel and Iran could lead to a much greater regional conflict as we sleepwalk towards World War III. There's a real possibility of this, and every day these exchanges continue is another step towards that regional conflict.
Mr. Kent, I know when we were last speaking, we were talking about how some of these conflicts can intertwine when you think about the backstory and the history that leads up to these conflicts still ongoing today, but you can see how they kind of engulf themselves at this point. I want to ask you, we are looking ahead to Passover, which is coming up. And I know there are several Israelis hoping there would be a ceasefire or something by Monday for Passover. With all of this happening, it's kind of taking away the attention from the hostage situation and the humanitarian crisis and all of these things going on with the Israel-Hamas war, with a lot of attention being on this, it makes it seem like that ceasefire conversation is kind of in a deadlock and stale at this point.
Absolutely. So the hostages have all but been forgotten about. The negotiations that were going on at Cairo have hit a stalemate, and that Qatar was re-examining their role as moderator. And so I think that there's not going to be much movement as far as hostage negotiation. In addition to that, Israel is readying their entrance into Rafah. It's supposed to be a two-phase type of military action. They are going to try to set up a camp to move the refugees to after sorting them to make sure that Hamas members do not get into this new location. And so Israel is posed on the brink of conducting those operations in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. And so the war in Gaza continues despite this bigger picture of a potential beginning of a regional conflict. We've got to keep that in mind, that the conflict in Gaza continues. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues. Additionally, I'd like to point out that exchange with Hezbollah has been intensifying. And so I would not be surprised to see another front started by Israel with Hezbollah to rid the threat of Hezbollah from the area too. So a lot of moving pieces here.
Absolutely, and great point you're making there, Mr. Kim, because as we've seen, some of these terroristic organizations have been taking ownership of some of these tragic events where they had nothing to do with it, just to be relevant in the conversation. So absolutely, we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Mr. Kim, we appreciate your expertise and dialogue with this breaking news alert here into our Live Now from Fox Studios this morning. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I let you go?
So we are all waiting to see whether or not Iran actually responds to this. They claim that they are not going to do so, but that does not mean they're not going to do so. So people should stay tuned and be aware of the fact that that might be coming.
Absolutely. Mr. Kim, thank you again for joining us this morning on Live Now from Fox. You enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
And we appreciate Mr. Ken again giving us the very latest as we're following this breaking news this morning, giving you a live look out in Israel now at 7:06 on the East Coast. We're also following another live feed that just popped up here in our Live Now from Fox Studios. This one taking you out to Capri, Italy, as soon to take the podium. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be holding a news conference on the final day of that three-day meeting of foreign ministers from the group of 7 major industrialized nations, what we commonly known as the G7 summit. So we're following a lot of top stories this morning here on Live Now from Fox. Now at 7:07 on the East Coast, let's go to our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour. And when we come back, continuing with those breaking news headlines, live events, and top stories of your Friday morning.
Have urged Israel to show restraint following Iran's strike last Saturday. Speaking after that meeting, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. played no role in the raid, but he's saying that Iran must be held accountable for its retaliatory strike on Israel.
We're committed to Israel's security. We're also committed to de-escalating, to trying to bring this tension to a close. You saw as well, or you'll see soon.
Wrong. It's about making sure that the soul root of Esau, especially when it comes to Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran's military capability, is destroyed.
G7 statement, a commitment to hold Iran to account for its destabilizing activities, holding it to account by degrading its missile and drone capabilities. And yesterday, the United States announced additional sanctions on Iran, targeting UAV programs, the steel industry, companies that are associated with the IRGC, the Ministry of Defense, and its armed forces logistics.
Al Jazeera's Jonah Hall is in Capri and sent this update.
In his final press conference here at the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting in Capri, Secretary of State Antony Blinken had strong words of condemnation for Iran, but he declined to go into any detail about Israeli action in Iran in the early hours of the morning. He was asked twice and declined twice to say whether the US had received any forewarning from Israel about a possible attack and shared that information with its G7 partners, or whether he thought that the apparently limited nature of the eventual attack had been the result of successful pressure applied by the G7 and Israel's allies. He simply said that the US had played no part whatsoever in any offensive operations and that he would say no more. Blinken sticking pretty firmly to the headlines of the G7's formal communique, saying that the G7 is more united than ever in working towards de-escalating tensions in the Middle East, condemning Iran. Of course, he recommitted the G7 to Israel's defense and security, and said that the G7 would hold Iran to account by degrading its missile and drone activities via sanctions. He also said that the G7 would continue to work towards a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza, and he reiterated US objections to any possible move by Israel to launch an outright offensive in Rafah. Jonah Hall, Al Jazeera, Capri.
At least 4 people have been killed west of Gaza City after Israel's military bombed a family home. While in the north of the Strip, Israeli forces shelled Jabalia and Beit Lahia. Other attacks have been taking place east of Rafah in the south. Hani Mahmoud is joining us from Rafah in southern Gaza. So it looks like the Israelis are not really sparing any part of Gaza from their airstrikes. Hani, talk to us about where they've landed and what's been the aftermath.
Yes, Daniel, this has been actually the concern for the past 10 hours. The world is busy looking at the Israeli military attacking Iran, waiting for the reaction, but at the same time, that has served as a distraction from what's going on the ground. The past 24 hours have been really bloody and violent. We're looking at 4 massacres against families across the Gaza Strip, mainly in Gaza City and the northern part of the city. Entire families inside residential homes. They have been sheltering in for the past months, and since they were driven away from their homes in the northern part, the eastern part of the city, were bombed, and we're not given any time whatsoever to leave these residential homes. And one person described they were given as little as 2 minutes to evacuate an entire building. That was definitely not enough for people to leave their flats, along the entire buildings. But 4 people reported that the western part of Gaza City, that's in a Shada refugee camp, and this is not the first time we've seen a refugee camp being relentlessly attacked and bombed. Several other injuries also from Sheikh Ridwan district, that's in the northern part of Gaza City, where more residential buildings were targeted and destroyed, including another residential buildings and a public facility in Jabalia, refugee camp in Jabalia town, and further north to Beit Lahia city. All of this happened while at the same time the Israeli military expanding its buffer zone at the eastern part of the borders of Gaza City, eating up at about 16% of the total area of the Gaza Strip, just further shrinking the area, making it very hard for people when the war is over, if they want to go back to their homes that happen to be located in the eastern part, they will definitely not have any home or any place to go to, turning the entire Gaza Strip from a densely populated area into right now evolving it into more of a killing zone that is full of destruction and mass killing everywhere.
Okay, Hani, thank you so much for that update from Rafah. Well, people were out on the streets of Baghdad on Friday in support for besieged Palestinians in Gaza. Demonstrators have been calling for a ceasefire every week since the start of the war in October last year. Al Jazeera's Osama bin Javed sent this update from Baghdad.
Every Jersey Mike sub is sliced and stacked right in front of you since 1956.
You slice, I snack.
I said slice and stack.
Tomato.
It's tomato.
Freshly sliced since 19.
For the last 6 months, every week, women, children, the elderly, going from one mosque to the other, protesting against what they call an unjust war that is being imposed on the people of Gaza.
We demand the government of Egypt open its border crossing and let in humanitarian aid. People are starving, they're dying of hunger. We call upon Egyptian troops to open the border crossing. We call upon the Iraqi government to help them with food and weapons and send aid and medicine.
Also, the international community, who they say, has abandoned them and does not care about the values and the international human rights that they have so been preaching. And until there is a ceasefire, until the desperate conditions in Gaza change, these people say they're going to continue to come out to the streets.
This is a violation of the universal values of the United Nations and other organizations that pretend to defend human rights. People are killed in embassies and in their houses. The leaders of the world are subservient to Israel, whether they're in Europe or elsewhere. They are subdued by Israeli criminality.
So we've been hearing fiery speeches from these people. They say they stand with the Palestinians, they stand with the Palestinian resistance, and they are going to continue to protest until their government steps in and the people of Gaza get some respite in terms of aid and a ceasefire.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera, a Russian bomber shot down by Ukraine while President Volodymyr Zelensky visits troops in the Donetsk region.
Hello, right off the bat, we'll paint the colors on, darken the red, the higher the temperature. Nice to see you, by the way. So a lot of heat through India, and we're bumping in humidity
Also
off the
committed
big
to
bomb here for
de-escalating, to trying to bring this tension to a close. You saw as well, or you'll see soon in the G7 statement, a commitment to hold Iran to account for its destabilizing activities, holding it to account by degrading its missile and drone capabilities. And yesterday, the United States announced additional sanctions on Iran, targeting UAV programs, the steel industry, companies that are associated with the IRGC, the Ministry of Defense, and its armed forces logistics. The G7 statement makes clear that G7 countries will adopt additional sanctions or other measures in the days ahead. Even as we've been dealing with the conflict in the Middle East and, again, the unprecedented attack by Iran on Israel, we've remained intensely focused on Gaza. We urge the rapid implementation of Israel's humanitarian assistance commitments. More aid, more crossings, better deconfliction, better distribution of the assistance to all who need it. We've seen important steps over the last couple of weeks, with more crossings opening, more aid getting in, more aid getting around. But we need to see sustained results. And we need, in particular, to make sure that there is distribution throughout Gaza. We also focused on the imperative of getting to a ceasefire with the release of hostages. Such a ceasefire would facilitate the dramatic expansion of the humanitarian assistance. It would also let Gazans return to the north, those who have been displaced from the north. The only thing standing between the Gazan people and a ceasefire is Hamas. It's rejected generous proposals from Israel. It seems more interested in a regional conflict than it is in a ceasefire.
This came out an hour ago.
Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. As we continue to deliberate the various developments from here in Israel, the region, and beyond, it's always important to highlight how everything started. 196 days ago, The Islamist terror groups from the Hamas-led Gaza Strip launched an onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war and perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200, mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping 246 people, including elderly men, women, children, and infants. 133 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. Let's now turn to our TV7 editor at large, Mr. Amir Owen. Amir, what can you tell us about the latest reports of a strike in Isfahan, Iran, and yet the Iranians have missed the window of opportunity 30 seconds later?
So it's a case study in strategic signaling. Obviously, a lot of thinking went into the context, volume, the public posture, having to do with the Israeli reaction to, response, retaliation to the Iranian offensive of the night between Saturday and Sunday a few days ago. And Israel apparently has decided that it must respond, but in a very measured way, because it can go through the motions of responding without escalating further and giving the Iranians the opportunity to decide whether they really want the event contained, as they said, after their offensive, after their attack with more than 300 missiles of various sorts, drones, and the like. And apparently, first of all, there was no Israeli official statement, but Israeli sources made sure that the CNN, New York Times, and other media outlets seen in both Washington and Tehran will carry this statement that what Israel did was very pinpointed. Israel could have used a hammer, but used a pinprick. It attacked one base. This is apparently in return for Nevatim Air Force Base, which was the main target for the Iranians. Israel did it overnight, when there are expected to be almost no personnel, and there were no fatalities as far as we know. This is the intended mission, to hit, but not to kill. And it made sure that everyone understands that this is the tit for tat, an eye for an eye, but not two eyes, not an entire skull or scalp. And from the Israeli point of view, the domestic base here in Israel should be satisfied, even though Minister Ben-Gvir is never satisfied with less than a full-scale war. He already criticized it as not enough, but others in Israel will rest assured that come Passover in 3 or 4 days, there will be no counterattack. And therefore, the Home Front Command already announced that there are no preparations for a special condition. That is, Israel does not expect any Iranian response. This too was a signal.
Of course, not all details are available, and we are still learning of the various developments, and we'll see. Of course, as you mentioned, there's no expectation for retaliation. I would also be surprised if that.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. I have it in 3 different varieties. I have it in the extra virgin olive oil. I also have it in coconut oil and also in avocado oil. This has the C60 molecule. You take a teaspoon of this a day, or a full dropper if you have the 2 ounce, and what will happen is that it'll soak up the free radicals, help to improve the cellular health, because it's bringing down that stress, that reactive oxygen species stress, and then also it's going to improve the mitochondrial health and boost up your ATP. So take it either in the avocado, the coconut, or the olive oil. You can get it in the 2 ounce, the 4 ounce, or the 8 ounce configuration. Again, take a full dropper of this a day or a tablespoon a day. I take a tablespoon a day. There's a higher amount in the tablespoon versus the dropper. But some people, they take the dropper because of affordability issues. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. It's a great antioxidant. It's part of the anti-aging protocol.
Happens. But is this a case, Dr. Uziarat, I will present you, of course, formerly a Mossad Division Chief, National Security Advisor here in Israel, and the Director of the National Security Staff. When we're looking from Jerusalem's perspective, we just spoke about Dr. Herman Kahn before this program started, and I'd like to introduce the term escalation dominance in the conventional measure of this scale. To what degree did we reach this ladder in which Israel surpassed, and yet the Iranians are once again recalibrating their calculations, since they already miscalculated some 5 days ago, with regard to whether or not it's beneficial to them, strategically speaking, to continue this cycle with Israel?
Well, I'm very glad that you employed this concept of escalation ladder, because when Herman Kahn designed it, he tried to create as many ladders possible in order to contain the escalatory potential that exists. So he came up with about 75 types of escalation ladders. We must do the same here, because clearly Israel's intent was not to do something that would contain in it an escalatory element. So look what we did here. One of the reasons why we limited the scope of our attack was because the Iranian attack was very large scale, was very aggressive, was very expensive, but in terms of damage caused, it had relatively little damage. Relatively. Very costly to us, but relatively so. We could not, and deliberately not done something which by way of damage was to be more extensive than that. You kept the proportionality level at areas in which there wasn't enough damage. Do not go beyond. So there are a variety of dimensions. Each one was employed so as not to allow the fact that the very act of tit for tat calls for escalation. Why so? Because clearly the step that you take is not just for punitive state. You want to deter a repeat of that thing. We did have an interest, for example, in deterring Iran from repeating the kind of large-scale attack that they had. So in order to deter that, you have to exact a higher price. But at the same time, the price that we paid under their attack was limited. So we limited ours as well. Now let's see how they react to that. If they accept the rules that we reestablished, then they will do the following. We attacked them directly because they attacked us directly. So we are proposing to them, let's not each attack each other territory. We will not frontally attack you, you will not frontally. So we get to praxis. Praxis is not bad to us because presumably there is lesser power, they are closer to home, we can deal with them. Let's see if they accept that. If they accept that, that by itself is good because it has an effect of containing the escalatory dynamic. And we need that at the moment because we still have some job to do in Gaza, and we want to prevent escalation in the north, so we have to temporize things. So let's see if they're willing to accept these rules, which may be interesting because it turns out the Iranians being what they are, they're certainly not to be liked, but smart they are.
Absolutely. Well, again, we're not seeking war with Iran, irrespective of the rhetoric. And if we talk about a direct confrontation, there is a difference, of course, with regard to the war that it launched on us on October 8th. And therefore, I'd like to ask you, Brigadier General in Reserve, Johan Wilson, formerly aircraft or an aircraft, but a helicopter pilot, Israel Air Force commander, and the chief of the cyber staff at the IDF General Staff. I'd like to get a little bit of your perspective on this from two elements. The one, cyber, the other, the Air Force. Obviously, some employment of diversions were implemented in order to ensure that the Iranians understand that the next stage would be much more escalatory and would cost them dearly from a strategic perspective. Do you believe something like that goes over well in such a climate?
I want to try to not sound like maybe Minister Ben-Gvir that you mentioned, but I'm afraid we're in a very difficult situation, and I don't think it's helping us with the proxies. We're in a dire situation with the proxies, especially with Hezbollah. The north is completely struck by Hezbollah this time of year. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis were supposed to have a very good time in the hotels in the north. The security zone has passed from the Lebanese side to inside Israel. Israel has lost its sovereignty. Now, I want to add to that, again, not that everything is bad, but it is a pretty difficult situation for Israel. I want to add that I don't think we're deterring the Iranians right now. And I'll tell you why. The situation is much more complicated in my mind. One, when the Iranians decided to do that, they projected power. They decided to use something that was words, and they made it action. Now, in startups, sometimes it's not very good because sometimes you sell a dream at a much higher price than reality that you have to actually deliver. But in military affairs, and when you project power, yes, they didn't hit. Yes, the price was gladly nominal, and you might say that the price was high to defend, but if you divide it by the years, I think it was worth it, every penny. But having said that, the question is, in my mind, is A, how are the Saudis looking at that? So the Iranians, when they project power, everybody's looking, not only the Israelis that have ballistic missile defense with the United States, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's looking at it. So how worried are the Saudis and the GCC states, et cetera? One. Two is, have we actually returned deterrence in any way in the action? Well, you can say that we punched back. Okay, direct. Okay, great. But the question is that going to affect, influence in any way, really, what's going on? And I would punch differently. Excusez-moi. I would punch in all ways immediately at the same time. And what I mean by that it was good to punch directly inside Iran to show them that we have the capability and the capacity, and in a very short time to do that. And this requires cooperation from within inside, which gets them on their edge. Very good. But what about punching Hezbollah outside of the normal punch, not back and forth for 6 months?
There were also strikes in Syria, multiple strikes in Syria. There were reports of various strikes but it's once again reasserting a certain diktat to the Iranians, saying, you haven't deterred us. We are still continuing to ensure that the so-called campaign between the wars was established over the years will continue irrespective of what you do.
I think, sadly, we're playing poker with a bunch of regional mafia leaders, goons, whatever you want to call them. And with mafia, you play like mafia. You cannot, again, poker. You can't just call. Yeah, you can't call. You have to raise. Sorry for forgetting.
It's Texas Hold'em.
This is Texas Hold'em. You have to raise, and you have to raise immensely. And the price needs to be outside of what they are used to paying right now, and they're used to paying.
Absolutely.
Not good enough.
So we
I
have here
totally
General Rosen.
agree with that, because if you don't, there's going to be a thought process in Iran that they can get away with it. But you need to not just escalate, you need to destroy their capability, especially in unconventional warfare, or it's going to be really problematic.
Basically bringing about the Kissingerian approach of, if you want to hit them painfully, do something they don't expect.
Kissingerian, this is Strange-Levian, it's Dr. Strangelove, and obviously this was the old Strategic Air Command version.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get vitamin C. It'll help to boost up your immune system. It'll also help to improve your skin. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well, because we're going through allergy seasons, take a double dose of this. Take it with water, because it's water soluble.
But again, another school of thought. What we have seen is a demonstration, proof of concept. The Iranians know that we have taken a small scale, a miniature base, and we have shown them that it is only subject to our will. They have no capability of defending against us. Apparently, the target was chosen in proximity to a nuclear facility without hitting the nuclear facility as another signal. Let's leave the nuclear business out of it. And as you said earlier, because we have more urgent business right now in Gaza. We have to finish the Gaza war in order, as Yaron said, to get on with Lebanon, with Hezbollah. Iran can wait.
Something that General Rosen has spoken about in the past is set a date. And therefore, I'd like to ask you, Dr. Ladar, we just heard earlier this week the Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz come out and say, until the next school year, the situation in Lebanon vis-a-vis Hezbollah will be resolved, either diplomatically or militarily. Is that something that has been taken seriously on the other side?
Not only I do not know, but it is glaringly absent that we are in a very serious deficiency in terms of knowing what the other side is planning or thinking. We underestimated the Iranian reaction to this operation in Damascus. We chose that we do not have any serious penetration of their decision making. So how can I venture to know, even without access to what is transpiring in Tehran or elsewhere? But then, in the absence of information, you have to assume possible consequences. And in there, if you have to err, you have to err on the side of prudence. When you come to this business, it's prudence that matters, not daring. Because sometimes you cannot accept the consequences of the consequences. So we are entering into very, very dicey waters. So far, it's not a nuclear game. But it is when it comes to Iran, even Iran was now threatening that it may consider breaking out. So it is playing this game very dangerous.
So the religious fatwa is somewhat...
I don't know, even that is expedient. And by the way, the influence of the fatwas may be less than the influence of some of the officers who are now in charge of the Iranian machine. So that is why we have to, in the first place, to improve, and that has to be done by intelligence, our consultation with others, into better knowing what is the position of others, what they're likely to do, and how successful are we deterring them. There are two ways to know how successful we are. One is, if deterrence fails, then you've been taught that your deterrence failed to be accomplished. But then before that, you may have information to what extent, indeed, the other side is military or not. And we need that badly when we talk so much about deterrence. Deterrence is a shifty concept, and to rely on deterrence is a high-risk matter. So we have to improve on all that, and that is why I myself would refrain from trying to predict what they do, but I can only advise what to do in the absence of knowledge.
So let me challenge you, Jules. While traveling in Washington and also speaking with many European leaders, I asked them a very simple question, but obviously it has significant implications. What would happen if the Iranians would now decide to break through to nuclear weapon capabilities, conduct a test possibly between either before the November elections in the United States or between November to January, where it remains a void with regard to the transition of power in Washington?
I think it would be counterproductive for the Iranians, first of all, because it would rally around them the alliance that is somewhat weakened in the last few years, sadly. But Iran is on the nuclear threshold anyway. I mean, we all understand that, and if they conduct, a test or an experiment or just show of nuclear capability, I think all sides understand what's going on right now, even before they do that. So I think that from the Iranian perspective, it would be counterproductive to what they do, because again, it's the difference between what I'm saying and what I'm doing. It's scarier sometimes to just say, I'm going to do it, just hold me, don't let me do it. I think that in the situation that we are in right now, Iran is sadly very successful in projecting power westward through all of its proxies, including the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. This, as an example, would have been a very good response to take down the ship that by the way, they moved, because they even thought that part of the retaliation would be on their base inside. It
may have been for the first time in a very long time.
They moved it.
They moved it back to their home base in Bandar Abbas.
Yes. So maybe the next step, again, I think that there's a lot of discussion about how we retaliate and did we retaliate. Well, I think it's completely missing the point, because we are in a very long campaign, and what will really be important is the next few months and years, and a clear strategy against Iran that contains it in its own country and takes care of all of Iran's proxies, which are destabilizing the whole region, counterproductive to Western, all the West, NATO, Europe, the United States, and other interests that are now very important to the United States and NATO, such as Ukraine.
I think we are underestimating the significance of the domestic dimension here. The decision makers in Israel are politicians. It's not the military. Military recommends, the military can devise options for decision, but the decision is being taken by politicians who are very much tuned to the political and public discourse. On the eve of the Feast of Passover, with the Israeli public still unnerved by the 6 months of war since October 7, with the hostages still in captivity, apparently politicians here did not want the public to be on edge during the 7 days of Passover. Many people are on holiday. They wanted people to have a good time, rather than brace themselves for the retaliation from Iran to the retaliation from Israel. And therefore,
and last time I checked, we're still at war in the south, and we have still, how many? 61 government displaced residents of northern Israel, plus 40,000.
That's true.
150,000.
They need to go all out and forget about what's going on with Passover. This is an appeasement strategy or a
people are not at home.
That's true. But on top of that, to get even more concerned. And you know, you've talked about the escalatory ladder. When you come to the Itzhak Navon station here on the train from Tel Aviv, there are so many escalators, such a long ride up the escalator for 6 or 7 minutes until you hit the ground floor, that by the time you get there, you can cool off. Even if when you were down, you wanted to retaliate against Iran. So they chose using minimum force, which is what the Air Force, General Rosen and his colleagues perfected so much. There was a time when people thought that using maximum force was the way. But with the microchip and micro everything revolution, now is the time to use pinpoint, precision guided attacks rather than carpet bombing.
With regard to the political echelon, the decision makers is ultimately the war cabinet that has been mandated by the security cabinet, and I think they have more irons on their shoulders for many years than most war cabinets around the world.
Doesn't matter.
My point being is 2 chiefs of general staff retired, and 1 defense minister who was a major general, commander of Southern Command, among others. Ultimately, you have a lot of military experience, and they are part of the security establishment as they see it.
But you know, Jonathan, you're almost describing the makeup of the ministers who decided on the eve of the Yom Kippur War that we can be complacent. There were several ex-generals, as well as...
Nobody's perfect.
Outside of this studio.
Dr. Arad, same question to you, but I'd like also, we don't have very much time left, so please keep it short. The G7 met in Cyprus in Italy. They had various deliberations on the foreign ministerial level. One of the key focuses of the discussions, from what I hear there, is the freedom of navigation, the Red Sea. And as such, there is a clear reduction in the attacks by Ansar Allah, the Houthi-dominated terror organization, towards freedom of navigation, since that same vessel, the Iranian intelligence vessel, left the Red Sea and was sent back to its home base for fear of Israeli retaliation. Does that provide enough evidence about the clear Iranian reining in and involvement in those attacks on freedom of commercial navigation?
Well, of course, it does exactly that effect that you suggested, and it demonstrated indeed the concern of the world to the navigation aspects and to maritime transport, and to the fact that the Iranians are causing a lot of havoc in there and should be restrained. Mind you, let me add another layer to that. When you're talking about Iran being vulnerable to attacks, there is another middle ground area in which it could be hit. And that is its huge dependence on its own oil exports and so forth. This is something that has been on the target list for years, and they should consider that. Now, if the Iranians escalate to the point in which there would be need to harm Iran itself, and if that be chosen as the target of choice, then this may interrupt the international trade in oil, and that has a global effect, all of which lead to, say, a global interest, be it G7 or others, to rein in all these threats to maritime, to the freedom of navigation, and to contain the effects in those theaters. And we should benefit from that as well.
General Rosen, last sentence.
Iran needs to be contained through its proxies. The capacity of Iran to project power westward in the freedom, through disruption of freedom of navigation and through all the land-based proxies, is something that needs to be dealt with in a long-term strategy. And this is the time that we now have strategic leverage after what happened to start moving into an offensive strategy against all these proxies.
Dr. General was in Mr. Owen and all of you at home. Thank you for.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges that I have, because we're in the allergy season now. You should be getting these for your home. They work very well. They'll help to neutralize pathogens and help to soothe the throat and help to boost up the immune system. Get the Manuka honey lozenges in a 21 count. You can also get the elderberry zinc lozenges in a 21 count. The drops in a 100 count, blueberry, and I also have it in honey and lemon drops in a 100 count. Get a bag of each for your household. They're very tasty, but better, it helps to boost up your immune system. This allergy season, because of what's been going on with the weather and everything else, this allergy season is not going to be good for people. So take my advice, get a few bags of these for your household. You're going to need them. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for supporting my work. Thank you for sharing the links, and thank you for watching. Have a nice day.